Welcome to Hebra, guys. It's time to do some shield surfing. Hebra, the homeland of the Rito tribe and the wild, cold northwestern alpine borderline of Hyrule, an inhospitable province that, similarly to Akala, borders only two other provinces, Gerudo and the wasteland of central Hyrule, from which we find the only two paths leading into the Alpine province, the Tabantha Great Bridge and the Aldor foothills. Hebra is special for many reasons, such as the Rito, ruins and structures from the ancient and distant past, and most importantly, fun activities. So make sure to leave a like and subscribe to help us to 250,000 subscribers, under 15,000 to go, since Hebra is the homeland of some of the best minigames and shield surfing locations, and hopefully all of this will continue inside the Breath of the Wild 2. It's time for some shield surfing, and to understand the key essence of Hebra, I went to an indoor ski hall named Snow, because of lack of snow outdoors. These 6 hours of skiing made me realize that this province of Hyrule, Hebra, was made for two reasons: to offer fun gameplay moments for the player, while at the same time challenge our curiosity with buildings from the ancient and distant past. Now then, since the previous episode of the ruins of central Hyrule was dark and depressing, we'll begin this video on a much more positive note before moving over to more serious subject matters. Hebra, like the indoor ski hall Snow I visited, is a winter sports paradise, where shield surfing, not skiing or snowboarding, is the name of the game. In fact, shield surfing is a crucial part of the culture of the province, as it was clearly demonstrated in Selmi's spot and her shield surfing downhill time trial minigame. This minigame was something we hoped for since the gameplay feature was first revealed, though a time trial was a little underwhelming when we could have had a complete racing mode against Selmi and other challengers. Perhaps Breath of the Wild 2 can expand the existing minigame and offer more demanding slopes to compete in. Here is hoping. However, shield surfing time trial was only one of a number of minigames found in the snowy mountains. A different minigame was found at the Rito flight range, which started as a trial to challenge Divine Beast Meadow, but then functioned as an aerial archery arrow time minigame. Ponder Snowbowling was another example of a great and simple minigame that also had some substantial financial benefits in-game if you knew how to abuse it. Poor Pondo, if only you made the minigame harder at some point. Hebra had indeed some of the most unique minigames in the game, which went beyond horseback and paragliding challenges. The more I think of it, I would love to see them all expanded and possibly even reinvented. For the shield surfing minigame, they could add a competition slope from Hebra Peak, which also is my favorite shield surfing Master Cycle Zero extreme sports slope full of dangerous jumps and so on. Yeah, I managed to screw my foot over on one of those while skiing indoors. Anyways, Hebra gave purpose to the Master Cycle Zero, as we could use it to climb a number of the smaller hills faster. The Master Cycle Zero, combined with shield surfing, climbing and paragliding, made traversal of the province into a pure enjoyment. We hope that this variety of mobility will be continued in the sequel, as you can only get this far with your horse in Hebra, and there are only a few rideable animals in the snow-covered parts of this province. Even so, do you know what there's a lot of in Hebra? Ruins and structures that date all the way back to the distant past. The most prominent example is obviously the Forgotten Temple with the goddess statue, which is the preserved site of the goddess statue from Skyward Sword. Watch Zeltek's video for the full explanation. And it was also a mandatory stop to obtain the heroic green hat, tunic and trousers of the wild. I really wonder what purpose the development team could give the Forgotten Temple in the sequel. One immediate thought would be a dungeon, and I do agree with that reasoning, though we have to admit it is a little far from this province's race, the Rito. Though this shouldn't matter too much, as we also have another structure dating back to the distant past, which could be a dungeon, namely the North Lomé Labyrinth, which, similar to the other Lomé Zonai labyrinths we have covered in the series, only served as Sheikah shrine quests in Breath of the Wild. But what if the 3 Lomé labyrinths of Hyrule located in some of its most remote locations will be Zonai dungeons in the sequel? More specifically, the first 3 dungeons in the game, before Link and Zelda reach Ganondorf, and we get the turning point that we never experienced in Breath of the Wild. In other words, if North Lomi Labyrinth will be one of the pre-Ganondorf release dungeons, then the Forgotten Temple could be one of the post-Ganondorf release dungeons. It could be, but doesn't have to be, as there are other locations that could serve as temples, like the ancient columns in the southern part of the province, which were supposed to be like a Machu Picchu of Hyrule in the concept art found in Creating a Champion. Even so, there are even more potential locations in the mountains, in particular if we get the first 3D snow and ice dungeon since Twilight Princess Snow Peak ruins. What better place in this regard than Hebra Peak, which Hole has been confirmed by Creating a Champion to be a scar from the battle against Calamity Ganon 10,000 years ago, obviously penetrated by the powerful beam of one of the divine beasts. Perhaps it was this mistake during the decisive battle that made the Hylians fear the Sheikah weapons. Since, if the Divine Beast could inflict such damage to one of Hyrule's tallest and most iconic mountains, what could these weapons do if they were targeted against a castle town instead? We're not saying this for sure, but it is highly likely that the Hylians' turn against the Sheikah was influenced by this grave miscalculation 10,000 years ago. This hole was then used for the major test of strength Goma Asa shrine, which is fitting based on the force that caused the creation of this location. Interestingly enough, it appears that this was one of few shrines constructed after the Great Calamity, as the hole in the mountain didn't exist prior to the battle 10,000 years ago. Nevertheless, as we all know, there are no signs of Sheikah shrines or Sheikah towers in Breath of the Wild 2's reveal trailer. Then again, why would there be any, when Link has completed all of them, but 4 which were probably intended for DLC Pack 3, which instead was expanded greatly upon and turned into this sequel. If there aren't any Sheikah shrines left in Hyrule, including Goma Asa, then its location could be replaced by an ice dungeon. Think about this, an ice dungeon inside a mountain. That would be the perfect location for an ice and wind-centered dungeon. It would be an awesome location, a place that would tease us but not be accessible to enter until Ganondorf escapes with the moving Hyrule Castle. Hebra Peak as a dungeon will probably be the greatest dungeon location, as we felt its potential deserved more than a shrine, a Korok seed, and the best shield surfing slope in the game. Still, we cannot disclose other dungeon locations in Hebra with its sheer amount of mountain peaks and frozen secrets, such as the Tor Quamo shrine, another fitting dungeon location, as this shrine was hidden within the Hebra Great Skeleton Leviathan, which again is hidden inside a remote ice cave. No doubt, this province dates back to the distant past, and perhaps even further beyond. Even so, some of the ruined or decayed sites in Hebra do not date back to the distant or ancient past. One of these includes Tabantha village, which wasn't ruined over the course of time, but rather by the calamity 100 years ago. Is there hope for its resurrection in Breath of the Wild 2? We've already established Hylian activity around its stable. The only thing that prevented further activity in this province was the threat of the calamity from the relatively close Hyrule Castle. Anyhow, with Dark Beast Ganon's destruction, it's quite possible that Tabantha village could be rebuilt as a part of a side quest. Yes, like most of this province, it isn't exactly the ideal locations to live in Hyrule, but as an old Norwegian saying goes, there is no bad weather, only bad clothes. In fact, as Selmy and the other permanent inhabitants of Hebra have proved, it is possible to live in this ice-cold province, even if you aren't a feathered Rito as long as you dress up. The low temperature of this region was indeed a key gameplay mechanic, and the Rito apparel was essential for survival. And I do hope we'll see more temperature and climate-based gameplay Breath of the Wild 2, and in the form of winds, and even heavy blizzards. That, along with a rebuilt Tabantha village, could greatly alter the way we perceive an hospitable Hebra, which could become one of the safest provinces if Ganondorf decides to move Hyrule Castle to the Great Plateau. Now, since we're moving westward toward the Rito and their village, I also want to mention that Hebra had some great enemies, including Lynels in rather interesting locations. Needless to say, we want more of these encounters and possibly even some interesting ice monsters that will block our path to dungeons and other objectives. On that note, we have reached Rito Village, our final destination where Kass is waiting to finally meet and play his ballads for the liberated Princess Zelda and wish her and Link the best in their romantic endeavor. After all, Kass knows a thing or two about love life and women, as he has a wife and no less than 5 daughters. Even so, will the meeting with Link and Zelda be the only purpose Kass will have to the plot of Breath of the Wild 2? Nah, it's more likely that he will once again be a central character, as he is one of few characters found in Breath of the Wild with an actual personality. I wouldn't be surprised that Kass would once again rise to prominence as soon as Ganondorf breaks free from his seal, and he will be there to aid or guide Link or Zelda on the path to challenge the source of the calamities. Kass is no doubt important, but what about Teba, the most forgettable of Link's Divine Beast attack allies? As a Rito warrior, it is probable that he will play an instrumental role in the inevitable battle against Ganondorf and his allies. Then again, it is a given that the voiced characters of the present in Breath of the Wild will be important to the plot of Breath of the Wild 2, in part since many of them had little to no cutscenes, with voice acting after the attacks on the Divine Beasts. Now then, we have covered the locations of the ancient and distant past, the fun factor of the province, potential dungeon locations, enemies, and the next champion, including some of the Rito, which leaves us with Rito Village and Divine Beast Var Meadow. There isn't much to say about the village, as not much happened here in the first place. We know that it might be at risk with Ganondorf's return, but other than that, it seems that the village will remain rather unchanged, with perhaps one or two exceptions. Unlike in any of the other provinces, Divine Beast Var Meadow sits literally on the top of the rock that the village is built around. So, perhaps something actually could happen to Rito Village if the Divine Beast collapsed from its rock, and with it brought the rock down and crushed Rito Village into the body of water that surrounds both of them. Hopefully this will not occur, and besides, the Rito can always fly away to safety. Then again, losing their home to Ganondorf would definitely determine the Rito to aid Link or Zelda even more to get to the dungeons, or which one of them could be even built by the Rito. After all, Divine Beast Var Meadow was the work of the ancient Sheikah, so there better be a dungeon built by the Rito or by the Rito and Hylians somewhere in Hebra. And on that note, we invite you to join us to Eldin and Death Mountain, but due to possible Nintendo Directs and a very tall Deku Tree in the way in February, it might take us some time to get there. So in the meanwhile, make sure to leave a like, and if you haven't already, subscribe and press that shiny notification bell for all notifications to not miss any of our upcoming Zelda and Nintendo Switch videos. Less than 15,000 subscribers to go to the big 250,000, so let's get there soon enough. Finally, a big thanks goes to all our great patrons on patreon.com/commonrealm and our members here on YouTube. Join them too to be featured and shouted out in our Twitter @commonrealm. Anyway, we'll see you in the next upload.